signing in. First of all, my name is Juan Abeta. I'm part of the backbone team for the project. And I want to welcome all of you. I'm glad to see many of you coming back for a second day of torture. We promise not to make it too painful today. We have today's a good day in the sense that we're going to roll up our sleeves and delve into some of the work. So here's some housekeeping and kind of Zoom protocols that I just wanted to point out for you folks. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to go into breakout rooms. And so a little bit later on, we're going to be doing that after our break, and we'll explain that process a little bit later. But for now, for those of you that are joining, please list your name, org, and location or title on your Zoom label. If you have questions or have any things you need to raise, you need support, tech support, etc., please list that in the chat. I want to point out Michael Green is with us, who's providing tech support for us today, and he'll be happy to help you solve any issues you may have. I'd like to also point out on the bottom of your screen, if you mouse over, you have what's called a reaction button. It's a little face with a plus mark on it, and in the reactions there, you can also signify if you want to raise your hand if you have a question to ask, and or you give a thumbs up, that type of thing. So you can use the reactions to also communicate. We ask that you mute your mic for your system when you're not speaking, so that we avoid any kind of echo or background noise. For the folks that are joining us by phone, we know that presents some unique challenges, and if you would like, for those of you that are on phone, if you have a question, feel free to ask the question. Before you do so, however, we ask that you give us your name, because we can't tell who you are. All we see is a number, and we don't want people just being numbers. We want names. So identify yourself and then ask your question if you're trying to access us via phone. I think that covers all of our logistics. Again, if you need tech support, let us know in the chat box. And so what I'd like to do now, again, is welcome everyone. I'm asking you again, for those of you that have just joined us, if you could list your name, your organization, and either your location or your title or role on your Zoom label. And what I'd like to do now is kind of go over what our session is going to be like today. So as I mentioned, today's session, we're going to really take a look at delving deeper into this project and trying to identify all of the various players and actors that we hope to engage with over the next several years. And so we're going to go through an asset mapping exercise this afternoon that should be a lot of fun, actually. And so the whole idea today is to work with teams. We're going to break people up into working teams. I want to let everyone know that these are right as present 5 working teams. It is by no means an exhaustive list or a complete list, nor a final list. It's just a starting off point for us to begin the work. We will also kind of do a little bit of a project overview regarding the initial plans we have for evaluation and for data collection and data management. We'll also kind of go over a survey. Many of you took a survey prior to this session, and we're going to show you the results of the survey. I believe there might have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 or so responses. And so we'll present an overview of that. We'll have a short break, and then we will go into the working teams. We'll break you up into teams. You're going to self-select. You will join the different teams, and in those breakout rooms, we'll do an asset mapping exercise. We'll give more detail about that when we actually come to that point in the agenda, but I will explain more what that means and what the expectation is for that exercise. Then we will rejoin the group after that activity. We'll have some reflections, what people thought of the activity they just participated in. And then we'll have our wrap up for the day and get prepared for tomorrow. Before I go on, just a quick check-in. If anybody has any questions about the agenda today or what we're doing, please raise your hand. I'll try to respond to those. If there are no hands raised, then we will go on to the next part of the agenda. Okay, Valerie, your question.
I just, it was my impression when we were first discussing this, the potential of this project, that there would be one person from each organization normally participating. And here for the retreat, it seems like, more than one. So I'm just kind of curious if the one person is going to be going forward with most of the work, or if you could comment on that.
Sure, there really aren't any restrictions on engagement with individuals or with organizations. And by restrictions, I mean a limitation. So if an organization has 3 people that want to be engaged in this project and maybe engaged in different aspects, that is certainly welcome. We welcome all and any involvement. We would like for each organization to at least have one person that for sure serves as a point of contact in terms of just communications. But anybody who engages with this project will be on our listserv and will probably have access to all the same resources that everybody else will. So there are no limitations on the numbers from a given group. Elena?
Thanks, Juan. And Valerie, we can send out our confirmation contact list as something post-retreat, just to make sure who we have tracked and who will receive messages. I know some organizations here have multiple people, and so we want to make sure that's updated. So we'll do that. Juan, my question for you is, I think we have a couple of people that didn't join us yesterday. And so I'm wondering if we just want to give like a super quick recap of what we covered yesterday, because there was some important training components that you delivered around collective impact in the morning. So not to surmise, but just say, this is what we covered, and we do have the notes to share and presentations in the folder for folks.
Sure thing. And basically you just said it. So for those of you that were unable to join us yesterday, you probably have received an invitation to join a communications platform called Slack. And in that platform, or on that platform, we will have information that is covered in all of our activities, and that includes the agenda. In the agenda for each day, there are hot links, and those links connect you to documents or websites that were referenced during the session. And so you can go and click on those and access the information that was presented. Yesterday was a very high-level project overview, just talking about who the major partners are, who the major people on the support team are, and what the basic structure is that we're going to use or implement going forward, including these working teams that we'll discuss more today. We also talked about the concept of collective impact and how it works in terms of gathering a broad range of partners together to work effectively towards some common goals. We're going to use a governance process called dynamic governance or sociocracy, which seeks to distribute power down to the decision-making power down at the level where it is being implemented by folks. And so each of the working teams, in a sense, is a decision circle. Each working team decides among themselves what their priorities are and what activities they want to address and in what sequence and what order and who's going to do what. They define the roles, etc. So we try to push down all of the decision-making and organizational work down to the lowest level possible for those that are actually doing it. A representative from each of the working teams will be part of a leadership council that will then try to communicate among each other and share the information from each of the working teams with the other working teams. That was a good chunk of the morning, or the first half of the session, excuse me. And then we talked a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We talked about how we try to build that into the processes that govern what we're trying to do here. And we recognize that there's still a lot of issues that still need to be addressed and a lot of structural and institutional inequities that still have to be addressed. We want to make sure that we deconstruct the system so that we don't repeat it. And so that's why we're using dynamic governance and the collective impact process. The other thing is, I think we mentioned that we have several methods of feedback, of getting information and engaging with all of you. One is actually obviously through the process itself of the decision circles, but we also have open office hours. So some of you you already probably have notice of that and have participated. We also have an online suggestion box that's going to be on the Slack platform. And so between those three methods, that's how we encourage you to communicate and stay in touch with us. So I think that kind of wraps up what we covered yesterday. Any other questions before we move on for today? All right, seeing none, I will, at this point, talk about our meeting goal today. So as I mentioned, our meeting goal today is to really work to help develop teams. And I again want to emphasize that these 5 working teams are just what we have identified at this stage. They can certainly evolve and change as we move forward and as new needs arise and we see new strategies that we want to apply. What we want with each of the teams, and the teams, by the way, are food access, food hub capacity, food safety, New Mexico grown, and evaluation. And what we want to do with each of these teams is to kind of understand the ecosystem that each of these teams will work in. And by that, meaning who are all the actors? So I think of this as a play. Who are all the actors that should be in the play? And then we're going to decide what kind of roles they have. And the idea in all of this is that we identify as many people and organizations, individuals that are part of that ecosystem. Some are going to be more important than others, are more critical or more key to making certain things happen. Others will only occupy a small portion of the ecosystem for a very specific time or a very specific purpose. And so we'll talk to you more about that process of how we identify central players, central actors, and how we identify what orbit, so to speak, they should be in. But the idea today really is to inaugurate the work teams and for each of those work teams to kind of self-assemble. We recognize that we have about 30 participants online right now. We recognize that this is not an inclusive and final list of team members. We know that there's still many areas that still don't have a voice, and we want to make sure that each and every area that's critical to this process has a voice and a seat at the table. So when we're doing these exercises, one of the things we'll be asking you to look at is who's missing, who's not present, that we need to add. And I mention all this because I think at this point we want to emphasize these team and the team membership as of now is not complete. And so we're counting on all of you to help us in that process of making it more complete, more inclusive, more diverse, and better reflect all the players that need to be involved in the process. So that's kind of our goal for the day. It's really kind of a self-assemble. Your individuals will determine which team you'd like to serve on. There's not a limitation there either. Some of you may be interested in more than one team.
Hello.
And if that is the case, if you're interested in more than one team, there will be opportunities to interact or to move from team to team. You're not locked in just because you went to this certain team today. One of the other things we recognize is there's also bleed or intersectionality between many of the teams. So this isn't an exercise where you have your blinders on and you only see right in front of you. It's okay to be broad and expansive. What we'd like to do is after all of these asset maps are developed for each team is put them all together and kind of see where Where are there opportunities for interactions? Where are there opportunities for collaboration? Where are there opportunities to leverage resources? So that's kind of the big picture of what we're at today. What I'd like to do now is maybe ask you if, again, because of the numbers, it's hard to do individual rounds. You will be doing that in your breakout rooms. But for now, if any of you have any questions about today's agenda or today's goal, please raise your hand and we can answer that question. Or if you're on the phone, just chime in and ask your question. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. There's a couple of notes in the chat about getting invitations to be on Slack. And so I just want to assure you that anybody and everybody that's been a part of this process for these next 3 days, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, you will be invited to join the Slack platform. And if for some reason you don't get an invite, let us know. Let any one of us on the Backbone team know, and we'll make sure you get that invite. And again, the agenda that was sent to you, which has links in it, has more information on all of the workout teams, the work teams, etc. So do refer to your agenda for those kind of links. And somebody's asking if we could post the working groups in the chat, so we'll take care of that. That's being posted now. All right. I think that unless there's any other questions about today's goals, I'm going to turn it over to one of my co-team members here. And Christina's going to talk a little bit about data management and evaluation.
Thank you, Juan. I have prepared a PowerPoint that I'm sure all of us love seeing, another one of those, but it'll just help frame up a lot of what I'll be discussing. I'm going to screen share this right now. And before I do, I just want to emphasize that as the evaluation working team forms, that the information I'll be presenting is likely to change based upon what the working team decides. So just keep that in mind as I review this. Can everyone see this presentation? Yes. I'm going to actually have to move it a little because I don't know where that go. Okay. I need to minimize all of you. Right now I cannot see anyone, so I'll go through my spiel and then I'll kind of come back to the group to open things up if anyone has any clarification questions that they would like to ask. But right now all I can see is this presentation. The whole premise behind the evaluation for this project is that it is a living, breathing process of back and forth. There's different kinds of research that exists. Some of it is very linear, and then some of it is more developmental or iterative, which is what the evaluation for this project is based upon. So it's a back and forth between implementing, collecting data, analyzing it, taking the analysis back to the larger group, planning, adjusting, and then doing the same thing. It's just a great way to for everyone to see where we're at in every given time and use the evaluation information as a springboard to come up with different processes or change direction. And this just provides a little bit more information about what that would look like. I will be the facilitator and a bridge between our support team partner, which is the University of New Mexico Evaluation Lab. They're not in the room right now, but they will be in the working team breakout when we get to that stage. UNM Evaluation Lab has lot of facilities that will assist in analysis that we just don't have. And they're also, off-site. They have grad students that will assist us with the research and allow us all to be able to participate in a more equitable fashion. And they will also be doing a lot of the reporting and helping us to share out that information. But I'll be the bridge between the group, the working team, the lab, and the project partners as a whole, just to facilitate. And again, the working team partners, we still don't know who those people are. Hopefully there will be people who decide to join that working team this afternoon. So what we have here is just, a review of what it basically looks like, of reviewing and identifying objectives for the project. Right now, there are grant objectives that have been part of the grant, but that doesn't mean that other objectives cannot be inserted into the process. We assess the capabilities of the larger group and who's capable and willing to do various parts of like data collection. The most important thing we need to do in the immediate future is establish baselines for the project so we know where we are starting from. That will allow us to evolve through time and evaluate the directions that we're going and see where we are at and evaluate progress. But that evaluation and analysis process is a circular movement. It builds every time the cycle progresses between collecting data and analyzing it, making decisions, and then collecting additional data and analyzing that again, and making more decisions as a group. We want to adjust the working teams if necessary, and just make sure that everyone is on the same page. So this is just a review that of the grant objectives that were in the grant. I don't want to reiterate these verbatim, but objective 1 is just increasing consistent market opportunities by 2023 by $1.8 million. Objective 2 is increasing the consumer demand for locally grown food as represented by SNAP and double up food buck spending. And then objective 3 is improving the stability and operational capacity for the transactional and support partners. Data collection is focused on 2 main types for all studies that are done. The quantitative is just the measurable information, and this includes surveys like the one that was sent out when we were collecting information about capacity. That was just a pretty simple quantitative survey. And the SNAP double up food buck spending and sales records, those are definite measurable data sets that exist. Qualitative research, that's something that is my specialty and what I've been doing for a while. It's more open-ended and allows for information to be collected that's a little less easy to identify or a little less able to measure, but still has a lot of impact. And this includes notes from working teams, the meetings, like the meeting we have today on the JAM board, interviews with working team members or people in the community, observations and things that don't necessarily are able to be measured in a more specific kind of way. And the types of data collecting that we will do within this project is something that the working teams will help decide based upon what people are capable of at a capacity level, and also what the working team feels will be most useful to determine the successful forward progress of this project. Now, the data management plan is usually something that is created and finalized at the very beginning of a research project. And it basically is just a guideline of what information is going to be collected, how it will be collected, how it will be shared and reported. But for this project, there's a rough draft that's been created, but the working team for the evaluation will be tasked early on with helping to finalize the data management plan. And that will include things like, what the plan will look like, how the information will be collected, agreement and consent about the analysis, and then defining issues of how the information will be shared among partners. Do partners want information to be shared with the general public? How will the information be archived and where will it be held? And also avenues for people to publish if that's something that partners will want to do. But that's one of the first things that the evaluation team will be tasked with. So the next steps is to form the evaluation team, and as you decide which working group that you want to join this afternoon, do consider the evaluation team. I mean, I know there's so much important work to do here, but the evaluation team is also the group that will help to really set course for future movement and be able to report back to the larger membership of the project, where we are going and the direction that we could potentially be headed. Finalize the data management plan, as I just mentioned, determine the baseline parameters, because we really need to start measuring where we're at now. But to do that, we have to define, what we're going to be measuring, and then make decisions about how often we will be collecting data, who will be collecting it based upon different capabilities of partners within the project, setting deadlines, making sure that information is collected and analyzed in a timely manner. I'm gonna stop sharing now. So that's a real high level overview of the evaluation plan as it's currently set. But again, I want to emphasize that it's open for evolution. Now I just want to ask people if they have any points of clarification, that they use the raise hand feature and the reactions, and I'll be able to see who lines up, and I'll be able to take questions and answer them. And did it make sense? I mean, more or less. Okay. All right. Right now, I don't see any hand. Oh, Pam, you have a physical hand raised.
Sorry. Quick question, just on the, and I know when grant is submitted, a year before, you put a few baseline measurables in there, like double up food bucks being primary here. Are we collecting data around some of the other initiatives that are happening as well, like New Mexico Grown into Institutions and other things like that? Or are we specifically focusing on double up food bucks?
That's a great question, and all of the data that people feel is relevant is open for baseline measurement. It's just a matter of capacity and how to get that information. And, so it's consistent, with any kind of data analysis, being able to collect data on a consistent manner so you can compare it through time, that's how you're going to gauge the success. But absolutely, that was just an example of the type of data that we will be collecting, but it wasn't limiting the type of data depending upon what other partners feel is important. Does that answer your question? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions about the evaluation plan as it stands currently? I don't see anyone. All right. So I guess the next thing is to provide an overview of high-level results from the capacity survey that went out earlier. So I have another deck to share with you. And before I do, I just want to say that, as Juan had said earlier, 16 out of the 33 folks had completed this, which is about 50%, which is actually not bad as far as surveys go. So what I'm presenting is a real high level overview of those results. What I would like to do is get a few more people to fill it out if that's something that folks might want to do. And what I'm going to do right now is put a link to that survey. I can't talk and type at the same time, so hold on. Okay, I just called it capacity survey, and I put the direct link to the SurveyMonkey in chat. So if sometime today or the next couple days you feel like you do want to go in and fill that survey out, that would be fantastic. In a couple of weeks, I'll look to see new inputs to that survey, and then I will provide a much more detailed output for the group. Juan, you have a question?
Yeah, just a comment. For those of you that have filled out the survey, it's not, again, a limitation of only like one survey per organization. If there are multiple people from your organization that would like to fill out the survey, that is fine too. This is just more about collecting data and getting information. So there's not a limitation on the number per org to reply.
Thank you for clarifying that one. So in a couple of weeks after I feel like everyone who wants to fill it out has filled it out, I will download the final results and share it with the membership of the research project so everyone can see the detailed results. But for now, I'm just going to provide some real rough, high-level results. And I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So the first questions in the survey asked about experience and capacity, and I've ordered the results based upon, the highest level of experience and capacity down to lesser levels. And just as a reminder, in the lower left-hand box here is just a review of the choices that people had to select for the different experience and capacity. So there was strong experience and capacity is kind of the highest level, and down to no experience and no capacity. 100% of the people who responded had at least some experience and capacity, which would be here in the blue, with meeting on a regular basis with project staff and partners, and also to recruit others in the community to participate in the project. And this one right here, the recruiting others in the community, I think is really a key for the success of the project. And I'm pretty excited to see that result, but I like data, so I get excited about odd things. The next kind of most, I don't want to say popular, but in terms of capacity, serving as a local hub for information exchange, 80% of the people who responded said they had at least some experience capacity, which is really good. 80% is a really good number. And then 20% felt that they had more limited experience or capacity for that information exchange piece. But this 80% will really allow for some healthy exchange of information. 75% of people, of respondents, had interest in analyzing policies that impact community, and also were willing to help facilitate and conduct meetings. 25% felt that they had limited experience and capacity. But one thing I wanted to emphasize that, you know, saying that you feel like you have limited experience capacity is not the same as saying that you don't have interest, right? So even though folks might have less experience or capacity, they might actually be pretty interested in both of these things. So it's important to keep that in mind, that capacity and experience is not the same as interest. The least aspect of experience and capacity overview was the evaluation and data collection. 60% with some capacity and experience is actually pretty high, since evaluation is more of a specific skill set. And then 40% had limited experience and capacity, but again, that's not equated to interests. And I encourage people who might have limited experience and capacity to join the evaluation working team if it's something you're interested in. You know, you don't have to have experience in it to be able to fully participate in that process. Now, after experience and capacity, the next thing we asked in the survey related to levels of interest. Most people, 94%, were very interested in organizational capacity building, of course, building the capacity of area farmers, and then leadership and development training. Next, with 80% moderate to high interest and 20% people with no or little interest, included meeting with policymakers about issues of funding and legislation and policies and different things like that. For the areas of interest, instead of doing a real high level kind of summary, I felt it was better to just provide you with the basic countdown of the areas of interest and how people, what they decided to choose in terms of what they wanted to work on. It was just a little too hard to parse this information out into a higher level overview. But I want people to keep in mind that respondents could choose more than one of these. So just because, you know, so 13 people chose equity and inclusion and networking and capacity building, they also could have chosen any of these other areas of interest. But it's not surprising that equity and inclusion and network and capacity building were tied for first. Aggregation, transportation, and distribution was also up there. And then the others, you know, it starts to kind of slowly fall off, where evaluation and data collection, once again, which is fine. I mean, I like it. I think it's pretty interesting to be able to see and view, you know, what is going on in the landscape as things change. So 6 people had an interest in that. I'll just take a second to let you just look at this. Okay. The survey that we handed out also had a couple of open-ended questions where people had the opportunity to write comments. And instead of just pulling out all the comments, which were pretty lengthy, I went through and put them into topic buckets and just kind of broke them out so you could see a high-level overview. But when I get to the point where I share the results from the survey, you know, you'll be able to see the exact things that people decided to say about each of these topics. You know, one thing the working team, you know, will decide is whether or not, when we share the results of the survey, whether or not we want to make it anonymous and remove people's names attached to it or not. That's something that the working team can decide, and that's, you know, issues of anonymity is something that the working team will have to decide about a variety of things. So obstacles to being successful range from funding and infrastructure to even things like the geographic distance, because New Mexico is such a large state. or outreach. How do you get the word out about the food that you're trying to sell? Target populations was another open-ended question that respondents identified who they were interested in working with, or the groups that they were most interested in impacting in a positive way. Some respondents were very general, just saying, basically shoppers, families, or New Mexicans as a whole. And some were very specific in terms of the individuals that they were wanting to reach, like farm to institution or restaurants or indigenous communities. So here's just kind of a basic overview of the partners that are in the room and the target populations that they are interested in impacting as a result of this project. But once again, people were not limited to saying one thing. So, there could have been someone who listed all of these things in terms of the target populations that they were hoping to impact. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing again. Once again, I'd like to invite everyone or anyone to raise their hand if they have any questions about that particular survey. Any point of clarification. And again, there were 16 responses, and the link to the survey has been shared in chat, and also Elena put it in Slack, so you can feel free to go in and take that survey and add your voice if you have not already done so. Okay, I don't see any raised hands.
Christina, mine is raised. It's
sorry.
blending in. It's blending in with the wall.
Sorry, Anita.
No
Yeah,
problem.
go ahead.
Well, one of my questions was, the total responses. So thank you for that answer. And then for the target populations, was that an open-ended or I can't remember from the survey.
It was open-ended.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Elena?
Hey, I had a similar question on the open-ended question for the target populations. So thank you, Anita, for raising that. And then I just wanted to sort of underscore a connection that we discussed yesterday when it comes to collective impact, that everything we're doing is data informed. And so the value and importance of this evaluation group is paramount, right? Like everything we do is informed by this process. And so in case, I'll just admit, I'm not someone who is very versed academically in evaluation, but I'm intrigued. And so just encouraging folks to consider the leadership involved in being on that team. So that's all, Christina. I just wanted to give you a pat on the back because this is great to see. And I really appreciate the baseline. And obviously, the more responses we get, the more effective we can be in actually evaluating how we work as a group on these issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Elena. And I'm not, I'm a really good researcher, but I'm not the best public speaker in the world. So sometimes I'm like, here's this number and here's that number. But, you can always feel free to ask me anything at any time about process or inputs or, or anything like that. And I hope to see people at the evaluation breakout.
Thank you so much, Christina. And I just want to point out, this survey is going to be like one of many that we'll probably implement over the course of time, just to kind of take the pulse, if you will, a temperature of all of you, just to see where we're at. And so we do appreciate your responding to those surveys. And I believe now we go over to Elena, who's going to talk to us more about our rest of our day in terms of work teams.
Thanks, Juan. I can't figure out how to put my yellow hand down. So sorry about that, everybody. Great. Yes, I am here to share a little bit more about the working teams as we prepare for breakouts this afternoon. So I'm going to pull up a slide deck because I am someone that finds graphics pretty helpful, especially when we're talking about structures. So just 1 second. I was like casually relaxing in my new comfortable chair I brought in here. So sorry about that. Here. And just for those of you that had a chance to look at slide decks that were posted yesterday, I made a couple of updates, but it should all look familiar. So I'm just building off of what I shared yesterday. So I'm going to scroll through and stop us here. Can you all see my slide deck? Great. Alrighty. So we just wanted to reiterate, here are the topics for our working teams today. Oh, I said I wasn't going to change the name and I changed the name, Denise. That's funny. There's food access, which we've been kicking around that maybe that isn't the entirety of the topic there. And so you see on this, it says food and nutrition security. That's our first working team, and some of the priority topics, again, that were defined in the grant. So we really want to underscore that this is an emergent process, that these teams are being defined. Even these buckets, we might end up restructuring them, right? They might get bigger, they might get smaller, there might be more. But for now, we have food and nutrition security, or food access, as our first group. And they're going to be talking and mapping out partners related to the availability of food for community members, access points and outlets, as well as just presence of healthier local food, and then use and utilization at the home level and community level. New Mexico Grown, which for those of you that aren't as entrenched in the farm to institution work, that is farm to institution. So New Mexico Grown is what a lot of the folks in the field have sort of branded as farm to school, farm to preschool, and farm to senior center, among other institutions that are being targeted. So you'll see that the priority topics under that working group are vast, because it's all kind of components of what it is that we're coming together to discuss. But I would say what stands out there is really procurement and contracting processes, as something that group will be really rooted in, as well as you'll see some overlaps. As Juan mentioned earlier, there's overlaps and intersections between all these groups. So discussions around aggregation, transportation, and distribution is one of those, for instance, that you see in each and every one of these groups, because the context of those conversations will be different in these spaces, but the topics are similar. Then we have food safety, which again, I know there's more to food safety than just food safety. So in there you can see there's train the trainer programs, curriculum development, quality management, and how that relates to the markets, as well as specific programs like GAP type of programs for hubs and producers. And then there's food hub capacity, which is really targeted at increasing capacity of all of you on the ground and understanding what are the training needs that present across the board, and how do we help to make sure that our food hubs are viable and resilient and sustainable in the long run to be able to bring local food to our communities. And then evaluation, which Christina just did a great job of showing the very many layers of the evaluation team, both in relationship to our work together in this project, but also then how that work is messaged out to community based on numbers and data. So again, these are all very dynamic groups, and we wanted to just remind you of the priority topics as they were defined in the grant when it was written. So things are changing. So for today, we do have support team facilitators that'll be running breakout rooms for each one of these topics. You'll see in here that there are a lot of empty columns, because the idea is that this is self-selected, as Juan mentioned. This is an emergent process. So each of you can choose a team to join today for the actor and asset mapping activity we're going to do after break. However, you might be interested in attending 3 of these teams. So you might choose to pop in and out to a different one tomorrow to continue the conversations, and we welcome that. Just know that you're not committing to this being your only realm of which that you're working or have the ability to influence the dialogue. We really want to make sure people can come and go through these spaces. So for today, our support team facilitators in each room, room number 1 for breakout rooms will be that food access or food and nutrition security. Denise Miller will be facilitating that room. Room number 2 is New Mexico Grown or Farm to Institution, and Kendall Chavez was tagged as the facilitator, but she's not here today. So I'll be jumping in with Pam Roy to help facilitate that room. Room number 3 is food safety. Steve Warshauer is going to lead us through that process. And then room number 4 is food hub capacity. Jose and Emma are going to be our facilitators in that room. And then room number 5, evaluation, and Christina will be leading facilitation. But again, we really want to make sure that it's clear that They are the facilitators, not the holders of the dialogue. So we really need you to go to those rooms where you want to make impact, and consider dividing and conquering if there's multiple folks from your org, or however you want to be able to be in those dialogues today. And then I just wanted to give you guys, you're probably like me, where you're like, okay, we're going to do this, but what's next? How are these working teams actually going to lead to the grant and the project and the things we've committed to? So we wanted to give you just a really quick snapshot of the next steps for the working team. So here we are in April. Our hope is that in May, by May, we've really been able to do our asset and actor mapping to understand the ecosystem of this project. And so each of you will be developing out working team maps. And then as the backbone team, we will come together and attempt to make that one large holistic map that gives us a sense of the environment we're working in, where you can see the overlaps, the intersectionality, and really the leverage points, honestly. And so the tool we'll use for that, or the skill, is asset and actor mapping, which one after break is going to give us a little more training on that. And then we will move on to tomorrow. Part of our agenda actually is revisiting the working teams and considering who's not in the room that needs to be. And so we're kind of tagging that restructuring working teams, because as you've gathered, the people might change, the topics may change, the words we use to describe the team might change, but we hope by the end of May, those teams are settled in some regard for the interim, at least. And we'll use a gap analysis process to aid in that. So that's a skill that we'll be working on. In June, we acknowledge, based on the survey that Christina shared, based on our dialogue yesterday, we need skill building sessions along the way for everybody engaged in this project. And so we've identified the need for some diversity, equity, inclusion, skill building trainings for folks, as well as more training on dynamic governance and collective impact. So those will be tools that we'll use to help aid in skill building throughout June, and ultimately leading up to trying to gear up for planning. So the goal in the long run, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but is that working teams start to develop smaller plans for what's within your sphere of influence. And we have a tool for that, which is a fishbone diagram. You will hear about that in our next full team meeting. So you can check it out of your brain for the moment, but we will be headed in that direction. And that's where we'll put pencil to paper around activities and goals and more linear style planning. And then in July, what we're gearing up for in this whole slide, if you take nothing from it, is we're trying to build the capacity of each of the working teams to determine the leadership of those teams, who's going to represent on the leadership team for the broad project. And we will be providing some training and, again, more skill building sessions leading up to leadership team elections, which would happen in those working groups. So I just shared a lot. I'm going to pause. I'm going to unshare my screen so I can see all your faces and ask for a clarification round, either on the breakout rooms today or on the longer term, just immediate next step timeline that I shared. Valerie.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have any sense of what kind of time commitments people will need to plan on for these.
It's a really good question. And I'm going to ask both Denise and Juan, who've also been looking at the documents, to help me on that. I think we anticipate in the original letters of support that some of you submitted on behalf of the grant, I think we anticipated somewhere around maybe 8 to 10 hours a month. I don't know if that's accurate, to be honest with you. But yeah, we're anticipating a pretty high level of engagement from all of you. That's what I can tell you today. And again, it's dependent on your organization's capacity and interest to influence this space. So if you have the ability to have more than one staff member, we welcome that, and we don't expect it consistently, but we do, I'll throw it out there, I'll say it, we do expect to have at least one representative from your orgs when we're in these groups as much as possible. Sorry, Valerie, I don't have a concrete hours for you.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add along that line is a lot of you are doing a lot of this work already in your, as part of what you do. So some of this work is going to be actually about connecting what you're doing and connecting that with what others are doing. And so that's the whole idea of the asset mapping, is trying to figure out where, as Elena mentioned, these leverage points are. So some of that work may be, in a sense, redundant, in the sense that it's something that you're doing now but will be shared with others.
Thanks, Juan. Valerie, I hope I addressed your question well enough for today. Good. Okay. Mike, I see your hand raised.
Hi, thank you, Elena. Just curious, you had me listed in rooms 3 and 4, unless there's another Mike I'm not aware of.
Let me look at that.
I know there's Michael Green, but there's a distinct between he and I. I'm Mike, he's Michael.
I just put you everywhere, Mike. You can go to whichever room.
Everywhere, nowhere, however I can best help.
To Steve. So I'm going to say maybe the food safety group might be helpful.
Okay, great.
And again, the important thing here is you can self-select. If you land in a room today and you're like, whoa, this is a different topic than I anticipated. Well, first of all, just so that you have some background, when you go into your breakout rooms today, the facilitators will confirm what the topic is and the type of the subtopics under which that's operating. And there's an opportunity to change that. So what is in that today? We will start chipping away at reframing and changing those topics when you enter your breakout rooms. So if it's not resonating with you right now, when you look at that list on the slide, which I'll post again after break, just know that you can make suggestions to add topics into those dialogues and into the asset maps you'll be working on. I feel like that's the theme that you're going to hear from us for the next 3 days. Is it's ongoing, it's emergent, and it's dependent on you, which might feel frustrating, but that is the reality of this process. So any other questions from anyone? Clarifications on what we're gearing up to?
Yeah, this is Steve with no picture. And this, I'm going to embarrassingly admit that I don't remember how we, in our breakout rooms, gather information for report back. Do we have someone to help so facilitator is able to concentrate on that? You know, and probably all the other folks know, but I'm sort of a late stand-in and want to be sure I do it right and that maybe we all hear that and it's helpful.
Thanks, Steve. No, that was a gap in my facilitator packet. So you just named it. Yes, we're going to ask you when you enter the rooms to identify somebody who will share out where you guys land, and your facilitators will provide a little bit more information. But Steve, the goal when we come back from breakout isn't going to be to summarize each one of the maps. We're not looking for that sort of share out, but rather some reflections on the process, particularly when you're looking at who's in the room or the topics you're trying to cover. So there's some framing in the packet. And if you want to chat Steve over break, we can, if I can help you in it.
I would like to do that. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
Elena, I had one more, actually, just a comment. So I'm really struggling with glasses. I've lost my good ones, so I'm actually not making faces at everybody. So I just wanted everyone to know that if I'm squinting or getting back and forth, it's because I literally can't see too well.
Thanks, Mike. You might have to be like right here.
Well, no, actually, I got to be back here. That's why my head's so tiny.
All right. Well, we have been very efficient as a team today, and it's a good thing because we know that the rubber is going to meet the road in the breakout session. So I'm going to hand it over to Juan to kind of shepherd us into next steps. If folks have more questions, throw them in the chat box and we will make sure to address them.
Sure. And thank you, Elena. And thanks everyone for your questions. Just a quick little housekeeping note. I know some of you have joined us by phone. And so what's going to happen is if you want to go to a specific breakout room to one of those teams, let us know in the chat which team or breakout room you'd like to go to. And then we will physically or manually move you your phone number into that breakout room, because I don't think you're going to have the capacity to do that via your phone. So again, for those of you that are on the phone, if you can let us know some way, but via chat or I guess also do it via Slack, Elena, would that work as well? Yeah, either through Slack or through the chat, which breakout room you'd like to be in, and we'll make sure that you get transferred over. I think right now, what I have on my agenda is that we're going to take a break. We're going to have a short video break and give everybody a chance to refresh themselves. And then when we come back, I'm going to introduce the asset map exercise and talking to you a little bit more in detail about what we actually are going to be doing in those breakout rooms when we come back. So I will see you all. We'll see you all in about 10 to 15 minutes. Enjoy the video.
Why collective impact? I'd like to say simply because it works, but really it's a framework and an approach that allows everyone to engage, and that is really critical when you think about sustained, scalable, systemic change.
Collective impact is, I think, a new way of thinking about how communities organize and take action together for complex outcomes or complex issues.
You can only really accomplish what you see, and I think that's what collective impact does, is it gives you this much broader view of the issue around you than a traditional approach does. A traditional approach keeps you somewhat siloed. This broader view, while overwhelming often, still allows you to accomplish so much more, understand so much more.
The difference between collective impact and collaboration, I think, is there's a really strong sense of interdependence when you have shared goals and shared outcomes that you're working toward. It's not just that we have to work together, we have to make sure that all of our partners succeed along the way as well. Because if they don't succeed, then our initiative won't be successful.
So collective impact has made a huge difference for us in our state. It has been able to bring together state-level agencies that haven't really worked together on teen pregnancy prevention, as well as some nonprofit organizations and other partners, to really think about how can we change teen pregnancy in our state? How can we reduce it in a coordinated manner?
We're concerned about issues of income inequality, economic mobility, and ultimately a lot of issues around poverty. Poverty is extremely complex, and collective impact is a way to think about and break it down so that there's really a directional focus, bringing multiple stakeholders on a complex problem like poverty and economic mobility.
But it also puts the responsibility on the stakeholders to come up with solutions, to work together, to leverage resources in a way that they haven't and would not outside of collective impact.
For me, it's totally different game, and I'm not very interested in being part of a collaborative, but I'm very excited about being part of a collective impact initiative.
We bring a passion to this work, and I think the framework of collective impact helps us to make that passion into an outcome.
Why collective impact? I'd like to say simply because it works, but really it's a framework and an approach that allows everyone to engage, and that is really critical when you think about sustained, scalable, systemic change.
Collective impact is, I think, a new way of thinking about how communities organize and take action together for complex outcomes or complex issues.
You can only really accomplish what you see, and I think that's what collective impact does, is it gives you this much broader view of the issue around you than a traditional approach does. A traditional approach keeps you somewhat siloed. This broader view, while overwhelming often, still allows you to accomplish so much more, understand so much more.
The difference between collective impact and collaboration, I think, is there's a really strong sense of interdependence when you have shared goals and shared outcomes that you're working toward. It's not just that we have to work together, we have to make sure that all of our partners succeed along the way as well. Because if they don't succeed, then our initiative won't be successful.
So collective impact has made a huge difference for us in our state. It has been able to bring together state-level agencies that haven't really worked together on teen pregnancy prevention, as well as some nonprofit organizations and other partners, to really think about how can we change teen pregnancy in our state? How can we reduce it in a coordinated manner?
We're concerned about issues of income inequality, economic mobility, and ultimately a lot of issues around poverty. Poverty is extremely complex, and collective impact is a way to think about and break it down so that There's really a directional focus bringing multiple stakeholders on a complex problem like poverty and economic mobility.
But it also puts the responsibility on the stakeholders to come up with solutions, to work together, to leverage resources in a way that they haven't and would not outside of collective impact.
For me, it's a totally different game, totally different game. And I'm not very interested in being part of a collaborative, but I'm very excited about being part of a collective impact initiative.
We bring a passion to this work, and I think the framework of collective impact helps us to make that passion into an outcome.
Why collective impact? I'd like to say simply because it works, but really it's a framework and an approach that allows everyone to engage, and that is really critical when you think about sustained, scalable, systemic change.
Collective impact is, I think, a new way of thinking about how communities organize and take action together for complex outcomes or complex issues.
You can only really accomplish what you see, and I think that's what collective impact does, is it gives you this much broader view of the issue around you than a traditional approach does. A traditional approach keeps you somewhat siloed. This broader view, while overwhelming often, still allows you to accomplish so much more, understand so much more.
The difference between collective impact and collaboration, I think, is there's a really strong sense of interdependence when you have shared goals and shared outcomes that you're working toward. It's not just that we have to work together, we have to make sure that all of our partners succeed along the way as well. Because if they don't succeed, then our initiative won't be successful.
So collective impact has made a huge difference for us in our state. It has been able to bring together state-level agencies that haven't really worked together on teen pregnancy prevention, as well as some nonprofit organizations and other partners to really think about how can we change teen pregnancy in our state? How can we reduce it in a coordinated manner?
We're concerned about issues of income inequality, economic mobility, and ultimately a lot of issues around poverty. Poverty is extremely complex, and collective impact is a way to think about and break it down so that there's really a directional focus bringing multiple stakeholders on a complex problem like poverty and economic mobility.
But it also puts the responsibility on the stakeholders to come up with solutions, to work together, to leverage resources in a way that they haven't and would not outside of collective impact.
For me, it's a totally different game, and I'm not very interested in being part of a collaborative, but I'm very excited about being part of a collective impact initiative.
We bring a passion to this work, and I think the framework of collective impact helps us to make that passion into an outcome.
Why collective impact? I'd like to say simply because it works, but really it's a framework and an approach that allows everyone to engage, and that is really critical when you think about sustained, scalable, systemic change.
Collective impact is, I think, a new way of thinking about how communities organize and take action together for complex outcomes or complex issues.
You can only really accomplish what you see, and I think that's what collective impact does, is it gives you this much broader view of the issue around you than a traditional approach does. A traditional approach keeps you somewhat siloed. This broader view, while overwhelming often, still allows you to accomplish so much more, understand so much more.
The difference between collective impact and collaboration, I think, is there's a really strong sense of interdependence when you have shared goals and shared outcomes that you're working toward. It's not just that we have to work together, we have to make sure that all of our partners succeed along the way as well. Because if they don't succeed, then our initiative won't be successful.
So collective impact has made a huge difference for us in our state. It has been able to bring together state-level agencies that haven't really worked together on teen pregnancy prevention, as well as some nonprofit organizations and other partners to really think about how can we change teen pregnancy in our state? How can we reduce it in a coordinated manner?
We're concerned about issues of income inequality, economic mobility, and ultimately a lot of issues around poverty. Poverty is extremely complex, and collective impact is a way to think about and break it down so that there's really a directional focus, bringing multiple stakeholders on a complex problem like poverty and economic mobility.
But it also puts the responsibility on the stakeholders to come up with solutions, to work together, to leverage resources in a way that they haven't and would not outside of collective impact.
For me, it's a totally different game, and I'm not very interested in being part of a collaborative, but I'm very excited about being part of a collective impact initiative.
We bring a passion to this work, and I think the framework of collective impact helps us to make that passion into an outcome.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope you all got refreshed and are ready to roll up your sleeves. Helena, are you sharing?
My cold toast, yeah, you can have some on.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to now get into our actual work team breakouts. Just a quick logistical question for the backbone support members here. I see in the chat that a couple of folks were having trouble with their phone accessing the chat to let us know where they wanted to be placed in their breakout room. Is there a number they could call or some other place they could text for that request?
We can probably just unmute them on and they can tell us after everybody else self-selects. We can just unmute them and they can tell us.
Okay, so if you heard that, everyone, so if you're on the phone and you don't get transferred to your room, just stay in the main room and then come online and we will ask you verbally where you want to go and we'll switch you over. So we'll make sure you all get to your rooms, no problem. Also, just in terms of, since we're talking about technical assistance, if you have any tech problems within your break room, you're going to be using these things called Jamboards. You're going to be, you may have some questions regarding process. Just send someone from your breakout room back to the main room. There'll be several of us hanging out in the main room, and we can answer your questions or go back with you into your room to see if we can solve that issue. Okay, so again, if you're having tech problems, try and join us back in the main room and we'll try and assist you if we can. All right, folks, so let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do now. And so this is what we call an asset mapping exercise. And basically the idea here is for all of us to, each of the working teams is going to be at the center of a chart. And you as the center of the chart are going to survey your landscape, your ecosystem in all directions around you, and populate it with all of the organizations and the people that you feel over the next several years you'll come into contact with or will need to come into contact with to engage in your work. And so I mentioned earlier that we kind of look at this as actor mapping, and the reason we call it like an actor mapping because everybody's in this big play, and so everybody has a role, and what we hope to do is identify all of the actors and the roles that need to be populated in this ecosystem, and then in some sense assign a priority to them. Those that are most key or prominent or critical to success are placed closer to the center. Those further out in orbit are those that you come in contact with, but they may not be essential or maybe only for a very specific aspect of the work, and they maybe only for a very limited time. So I want to really focus on the word asset mapping. Too many times, I believe when we do this kind of work, collective impact work or systemic change work, we tend to look at underserved or under-resourced communities through a deficit lens. There's something missing, there's something wrong, they don't have this, they don't have that. So I would urge you not to look at this through the deficit lens, but to really think of it as an asset lens. Who are the organizations, who are the individuals that contain unique expertise and skills and knowledge and assets of networking and of other peoples and connections, et cetera, that we can leverage into the work. So really look at it as asset mapping. I'm going to do a little screen share here to show you exactly kind of like what you'll be doing. So if you give me a second here, let me pull this up. Hold on. And this will kind of just show you the steps that you're gonna go through in your asset mapping process. Let me make this full screen. Okay. So this is an example. So in the center there, it's going to be like food access or food hub, evaluation, whatever your work team is, that will be the center circle. In this particular illustration or example, this is a child from 0 to 8 years old. What does who does a child at that age, who do they come in contact with? Who's in their orbit? Who's in their ecosystem? Who do they interact with? And so you see these large buckets all around there, you know, the parents, and there's education and social services, et cetera. So that's kind of the template, if you will, that each of you will have. You'll have a similar template for your team. You may need to add additional buckets. You may want to move buckets around so that if they have some interconnection, maybe they belong near each other. Then the next step you're going to do is you're going to start putting in organizations, institutions, maybe individuals that populate those different buckets. So for instance, if we look at the health bucket over to your right there, you'll see in the health bucket all of these different entities. But if you look at the health bucket where it comes into contact with education, you'll see things like sports, nutrition, education, after school care, because there's some bleed there. They kind of bleed over each other. So you see that process that happens there. And so basically, again, there are no right or wrong answers in this exercise. It's just a matter of putting in there everything you think that should be in there. It can always be added and subtracted from at later dates, but right now we're just trying to gather from your experience what you feel should be there. Ultimately, once we get all of the actor maps developed and we're familiar with them, we will actually do a prioritization so that those that have the most or the most critical connection to that child, 0 to 8, are the closest ones to that circle, i.e. the parents and their teachers, et cetera. And as you see, as you radiate out, it goes farther and farther away, but still groups that have some kind of tie. So the concentric circles kind of represent the levels of proximity to that experience of that child. So that essentially is what a mapping exercise looks like. You'll have each one of you in your team will have a similar map. The one thing I really want to emphasize in this is that all of you are the experts. So whatever you, like I say, there's no right or wrong on this. You are the experts, so you populate those maps as through your experience. Some of you have been working in this for a lifetime. Some of you are just beginning your careers in this area. And then a lot of us are all in between. So again, we want to draw on all of that experience and all of that information to do this. So, you know, feel free to add in and do as much as you can. There's, again, it's better, I think, to err on the side of more rather than less. So that's kind of the asset mapping exercise. I just wanted to throw that out there. If Does anybody have any questions before we split into the breakout rooms about what you're expected to do? If so, please raise your hand and I'll try and answer those questions at this point. Okay, I don't see any questions. So remember, you're going to go into your breakout room. Your facilitator will be there to tell you what the topic is and to greet you. Do follow your facilitators. They're going to do this in rounds. In other words, when we start populating these maps, they are going to do rounds and they're going to go person by person in rotation to get your input. And so we're going to go through several iterations, several rounds, so we'll have plenty of time to populate. And that gives everyone an equal opportunity to add their input. So we will, again, I'll be in the main room if any of you have any questions. And I think now we can, there's a process where I think Michael's going to pop up some things here where you can press on a button and you can get to your room. So we will see you all shortly.
Thanks, Juan. And you guys probably saw while Juan was talking, I hijacked the screen. As a reminder, here's the topics nested under each one of the working teams. And I threw in the breakout room allocation into the chat box in case you're wondering, but it's in order of these topics. So it's pretty straightforward. And I think the one other thing to underscore for our room facilitators, if you need any help, please, as Juan said, return to the main room or throw it up in Slack and one of us will come and join you if it's tech help or facilitation help. And again, this is an opportunity for us to model that collective impact process around clarification rounds and response rounds. So we realize we've been doing that in short form in the large session, but in the small breakouts, you will do full rounds of that. Thank you. I'm going to hand it to you, Tech Guru, to help us out.
All right, so all of the breakout rooms have been opened. You should have received something pop up on your screen letting you know that you can join different rooms. People who wrote in the chat that they wanted to be assigned to certain rooms, we'll get to that here in just a second. But for the rest of you, you should see a pop-up allowing you to join different breakout rooms.
Hey, Michael, this is Denise. I have a question. As a facilitator, am I automatically populated in there? Because it doesn't seem to let me do anything.
Yeah, it doesn't either.
All right, I will assign you guys to the rooms. Denise, you're in room 1. Christina, I heard your voice 2. You're in room 5.
I'm trying to join. This is Alma. I'm trying to join room 1, but it's really not allowing me.
All right, Alma, I will send you to room 1.
Thank you.
And if others are running into that, in the bottom of your Zoom thing, there's a graphic that has 4 tiles. It says breakout rooms. If you click it, you can see who's gone where, and I think it'll let you join from there.
No, I'm still not in there. I can't join from that.
Yeah, same here.
And I don't have that at the bottom of my screen.
Ditto on all of that. This is Elga.
Technology at its best.
Oh, that's weird. I wonder why. Okay, thank goodness we have Michael. Thank goodness.
Could it be because you're designated as a co-host? It gives some, it's blocking you or something?
I am not a co-host of any kind, or a moderator, or a facilitator.
Let me see.
Hang in there, folks. We'll get there one at a time.
Stay tuned.
Oh, I can help move people. Okay. Pam, I'm going to move you. So Mike, I'm going to move Pam. Just
Number 2. Thanks.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
At least I think I can. Thought I could.
Here I am.
Turns out I can't. I can move people when they're already in a room. I can't put them in one to start.
Hey, this is Ben Rasmussen. I'm trying to go to room 2 and it doesn't seem to be letting me.
Thanks, Ben. Hang in there.
Hi, this is Erin Ortigoza with the phone number 505-455. And I was hoping you could send my phone to breakout room 3 when you get a chance.
Sure thing.
Because my face is in there, but my voice is not yet.
Wow, that seems really strange. Be physically in a place, but your voice isn't with you. Oh my goodness.
Hi there, this is Thomas at New Mexico Harvest. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tom.
Yes.
Hi, would you mind moving me into the hub capacity room? I called back in and I'm on the phone side of things.
Cool. Yes, I'll send you right over.
Breakout room number 2, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Michael, this is Pam. I need to go to room 2 and I'm a facilitator. So, but I think Elena might have gotten there.
All right, I'll send you over to room 2.
Thanks. Ah, there it is.
Hi, this is Nina with Squash Possum. I'm trying to get to the food hub room 2. I keep clicking the breakout room thing, but it won't let me in.
All right. Let me see what I can do. Hold up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Michael, Helga Garza would like to go to room 2.
Is that the New Mexico grown room?
Room 2 is the hub capacity, I believe.
Okay, I need to go to the New Mexico grown. Think
Okay.
it's room 4.
All right. Man, Juan, I've never had this many issues with breakout rooms before.
I know, it's kind of strange. I'm trying to move people too, and I can't. I'm not sure what the
Like I
deal
should.
is.
It shows them, but like in gray. So then it says they
Right.
haven't joined.
Do you think maybe we pop them out and then try popping them back in? That might work.
We can try it.
So Nina, are you still waiting for a move?
I am. I'd love to be in the food hub room, please. If possible.
Hey, Juan, we're having difficulty accessing the Jamboard template. We're trying to log in, but it only gives us access to view it, but not actually edit it.
So we all learned a little something today, I think, confidently I can say. And we added a little time. Thank goodness we were efficient on our agenda. And so I think we could still have pretty full conversations, but share out folks or room facilitators, when you do come back, we're going to go into just a round of quick reflections. And I would be curious if we could address, how far you got. If you feel like, boy, we could have done this for double the time, because that way we know that we need to spend significant time revisiting these maps. So just one more thing to add to your share out. And then for those of you, I hope you all got to some of those critical questions that were for room facilitators number 6. So questions about who's at the table. Are we representing the beneficiaries of these programs as well as the stakeholders? Is there diversity geographically as well as culturally, racially? So that's something that I think we want to bring into this reflection space as we're looking at these maps and considering next steps. And I'm going to hand it to Denise, and I'm here if you need some support. I know you were just running a room, so I'll be here.
Yeah, thank you, Elena. Although I think you covered, I don't think I have too much as the facilitator for this section on the reflections. I think Elena just covered it in terms of that we hope each room has someone who can, I don't know, Elena, if I don't know that it's thinking about our own room. I don't know that it would be helpful to see our Jamboard. Maybe that'll be another time. Our Jamboard was not quite ready for public viewing, I don't think. So hopefully each group has chosen a spokesperson who can illuminate us on just some high points of what you, either how you found the process, the areas that Elena just said about if you got a chance to get to the equity and who the beneficiaries are and the geographic distribution, some things like that. So we have about 5 minutes per room. I think for the sake of just staying in the same order so that we don't get confused, we'll just say that food access was room 1. So maybe we can start with food access, and that is Alicia, who's gonna give you a high-level overview of what we talked about. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Yeah, we started with the question about the title, whether we were going to keep the food access or the food nutrition and security title. And so we all kind of went around and discussed that. And I think we settled on that we like the term food access for a few different reasons. One of them being that it is more broad and it is speaking to the purpose and the intention of what we're trying to do with this mapping exercise. And, we brought up words like food sovereignty and some other words that could be used in this scenario, but we all sort of settled on food access as the best fit. And then we pulled up the Jamboard and we were looking at the different categories and, trying to assess what was missing from the categories, if there was anything missing. And we added a couple of categories and then sort of started sticking notes all over the Jamboard. And I think that we could definitely show our Jamboard. I would be proud to show it. Just because, I feel like this is a brainstorming stage of the process, it seems like, and that is valuable to show the process. And I think we could have used more time. We had some good conversation. We kind of got to know each other a little bit in the beginning. And let's see, what else can I say? So we added a supply, like a local supply category to our Jamboard. We have for the different categories, marketing and promotion, supply, local supply, outlets, incentive programs, and education. And we also added customers or communities because not all customers are communities and not all communities are customers. But we also sort of briefly talked about the like just sort of, I guess, shifting the way that we're doing this exercise to the asset-based framing, sort of, that where we are mapping the different communities, people, and organizations that are the assets in this mapping exercise. But I know, at least for me, I felt like it was very challenging because the first thing that comes to mind with me is like, what are the barriers and like, why is this an issue? And we also talked about the gaps, like, where are those gaps? And are we talking about this as a regional issue, as a like what is our radius, and yeah, so that's what I have to share. I don't know if anybody else wants to add from our group. If I missed anything, definitely, you know, chip in. And yeah, thanks.
Is there anyone else from Food Access? I think you did a really good job of covering it, Alicia. And it's not that I think we'll find a way. I don't really know technically, Elena. I'm sure there's a way that we'll be able to see each other's Jamboards. I just don't know how that will function, but I'm sure we'll be able to see
You could do it
everyone's
right now if
Jamboards.
you're really wanting to through the agenda links. So all of you have an agenda in hand. If you want to click it and look at them, you can. Please don't edit them for the sake of the groups, but you can take a quick look if you'd like to, if you're so curious. Through your agenda.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question? As we hear from our breakout rooms, can we hear how many you were in your collaboration?
We were 6 of us, including Denise, I believe.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a good question, Steve, because we have no idea what the other groups look like.
I want to know where everybody went. Yeah, I'm not asking for names, just just how our critical mass moved once we were self-selecting.
Right, it'll be very interesting. So room number 2 was New Mexico grown, and I don't know, Elena, if you facilitated that or if it was Pam or whoever or we don't need the facilitator, actually, whoever you chose as your spokesperson.
It was actually Food Hub capacity. So Emma and Jose is room number 2. Am I wrong?
You're wrong. I think I had capacity. I mean, maybe they got switched. I thought room 4 was capacity, but what do I know?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, they did get switched.
Okay.
So I think room number 2 is Food Hub capacity. We were room 4. I feel pretty confident.
Okay. So room 2, Food Hub capacity, Emma and whoever your persons.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and present for our group. So yeah, kind of similar to what Alicia was saying. I think that we had kind of similar discussions about the Food Hub capacity. One of the things that came up that sort of echoes Alicia as well was that it's hard to map out the assets because we do have a tendency to see the challenges and the barriers that we're all kind of facing. So definitely want to acknowledge that that was something we struggled with too. And we also discussed the title, Food Hub capacity. We all kind of determined that our definitions of what a food hub is kind of different between each organization that was part of our group. And so we sort of discussed the possibility of maybe renaming that or just to help shape more of a collective definition of what that means. We also added a couple of categories. We didn't change any of the existing ones, but we did add supply as one of the buckets. We also added quality control and equity. We saw those as really important pieces of the Food Hub map. And let's see. Yeah, one of the big takeaways was that it's really our farmers, we feel like, who are at the center of this map. Farmers, as well as institutions, the different markets, and the beneficiaries of those markets who are, yeah, kind of centered here. Let me see. I think that's basically the summary. Jose, am I missing anything? You're my backup.
I think the only thing that I would mention would be that when we did cover a little bit on the equity side and asked people to write down other organizations or food hubs that deserve to be on this table, and we need to hear their voices as well. So some of them are Shiprock Traditional Farmers Cooperative. Even though they're a cooperative, they're a huge group that aggregate all their food together. Who else? Anthony Youth Farm and some others as well. So I think that's important to diversify and hear other people's voices. Even though our group was a little bit large, sort of, well, I guess it was okay. 6 people, I think it was 6, 7, and more people logged in as time went by. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be talked about when it comes to that last point 6, which is equity. But so far, that was all we hit just for now.
And also, just to add to that, I definitely feel like we could use a lot more time to work on this more. I think we all kind of agreed, more or less, that it just feels a little bit abstract still. So we're kind of in anticipation of how this project unfolds over the next few months. And it's both exciting and, a little bit daunting too. But I think that, yeah, this is a good starting point. So we're feeling pretty good about our map.
Thank you, Emma and Jose. And yeah, I think everything that you guys hit on sounds about right. Needing more time for the exercise without a doubt. Definitely still abstract for me as well in terms of seeing everything unfold. So yeah, I hear you, and I think we'll be we're working on how to unfold the next steps, because it all, that's the way our brains work. You want to know, well, how does this fit into where we're headed? I have one question for you, Emma or Jose, because I noticed that you said you thought about changing the name of Food Hub Capacity. Did you end up changing the name of the group for now, or did you just leave it for now?
We just left it for now, but that may be something that we want to discuss further in the future.
Denise and Emma,
perfect.
If I could add something.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm adding this not just because we talked about it, because I clicked on the room 1 and noticed that they had it on their chart too, is that we need more farm supply and value added supply. It's kind of an end game to grow the market demand for stuff and then not have more supply too. It just increases competition for a limited resource.
Yeah, and thank you, Valerie. I completely missed talking about that point. It was really important. And also another topic that we talked about is the transportation. So that is definitely something that is a much needed resource between farmers and markets.
That is true. So I think team 3, if that one didn't change, was food safety. Does someone from food safety want to talk?
Hi, this is Erin Ortigoza. I will represent for food safety, and we had 4 folks in our group, and we began just kind of reacquainting, kind of introducing, catching up with where we're all at, kind of in our work and lives as it pertains to food safety and the bigger picture of the grant. And then we had a really kind of good grounding discussion on the bigger picture that food safety is sort of a doorway into. And so one of the I think we noted that food safety can be boring and regulatory, and yet it touches so much of the work and the quality of life for growers and for community members. And so there is the kind of like current status of food safety and the connotation of what that is. And then there's everything that it can be and should be recognized as, as we get to work more and more with with growers on the ground with their realities and with, you know, the possibilities that we can build into our programs. And so we had a good kind of, you know, kickoff discussion about that, and then went into our exercise and started pretty quickly populating different organizations and programs into the different categories, and had a bit of a discussion on naming out certain individuals and people, and you know, decided to go that route because they're very clear leaders in the work that have led the way, and just there's also a lot to be said for folks who are in the pipeline and you know, interested in becoming like future trainers. That was a category that we had, and other programs that are being developed. So we went ahead and put people's names on there as we were aware of them, as you know, kind of that this is brainstorming and completely malleable, but just, yeah, to kind of honor that work. And then we added, we had a couple of, you know, we couldn't change the background categories, or at least we didn't have the technical knowledge on how to, but we had maybe a couple suggestions for renaming one of the categories, or consolidating a couple of the categories, and maybe adding in another one for field days in the food safety world, kind of as a conceptual area that we could look into. And then let's see, we kind of got, you know, it would have been good to have more time, but we got a really good start and had pretty solid ideation happening amongst, you know, the crew, and had pretty equal participation, and kind of got into a flow of sizing the sticky notes and moving them around. And so at least for the tech side, I'm not super tech savvy, and once I figured out how to push buttons and move things around, it was pretty easy and actually kind of fun. So I think that's what I can recall. Does anyone else in the group want to add anything?
I would
No, I
just
think
note
you,
that
oh,
we started to create this, like we were also, like the hub group, we were trying to list future hubs and who's been missed and whose voices need to be here. And I don't think we got as far as you guys did, but I think that's going to be a bond between all our different work areas, is the hubs, their roles, their geographies, and how they stand for equity and inclusion.
Yeah, thank you, Steve and Aaron. I think, yeah, it can be challenging to only list the assets when our brains, you know, our programmatic brains are thinking about how to solve problems. So yeah, it sounds like we all have a small challenge with that. The next room is, I think, the New Mexico Grown. So whoever might be the spokesperson, thank you.
Not decide on a spokesperson, so I actually want to invite either Elga or Ophelia, because you guys, I think, put the most stickies. Do either of you want to share out for our group?
I'll say a few words on it. For us, we started with the name itself and had to have some discussion. That was our starting point. Just for clarification purposes. So we talked about how it does identify, or it is known to us that have worked on this New Mexico Grown piece for some time now through procurement policy change. So it was, we didn't want to call it an institution, but we know it's connected to the agencies and all of that. So there was discussion there. For now, I think we've kept it, but we're kind of like still got a little link to how do we better identify it. So that was there. And we kind of stayed with the mapping piece itself, the way it was presented, only because we didn't want to get too scattered too quickly. We wanted to focus in and identify on the pieces of procurement, communication, and all of those pieces. For us too, it was like who was missing once we mapped out the general players that are there already and that we know. So from there, then it was who is actually missing and why are they missing? There was a couple of organizations that did come up that don't really do farming entity in being able to be kind of selling and playing that part in New Mexico Grown, but do play an important part in building the school garden programs. So it was still linking them in that way, but as a secondary player. Interesting of who is missing from some of these meetings, and it was at all levels, from the actual agency staff and players that hold that power within that entity to make those decisions necessary. Also, linking it back to what I've heard on just about every single presentation so far is how important the farmers are to all of this. Everyone has identified the importance of the farmer and how they are active and how they are not. So I think that for us was a very important piece as well. And then it's, again, who have been the players within policy, who have been the players within the procurement change, who are the players when it comes to transportation. Where we did build a little bit was on the communications piece, because we do have different types of language barriers. From the native languages to the Spanish speaking languages to just in how we communicate, because everybody's at different levels of communication capabilities and attainment. So communications is a piece that I feel we still need a little bit more time on. And also a very important piece is the educational piece. And it comes down to the equity and how we communicate to the agencies on the long-term vision of local investment in, as we build what we call as farmers, an environmental economy. How do we keep our next generation of farmers moving forward as we build these programs? And it all comes back to the equity and educational piece and touching on how we are addressing climate change factors through these long-term visions of building capacity of small-scale farmers. So that's what I have to say. I don't know if Ophelia would like to add in or anyone else. Thank you.
So a couple of other things need to be discussed. And one of them was, I brought up pricing and Helga brought up education. And both of those are linked together. Excuse me, hold on.
I'll fill in until Ophelia's back. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, right when I speak, the phone rings. So we brought up pricing and education, and both of those are linked together. Pricing is a big issue with our senior centers, but they need to be educated on what the farmer needs, what the farmer's going through, what it costs them, the time that it takes, and so forth. And they're not educated in that area. That's why it's important for the farmers to talk to our providers and them to get to know these families that are farming, because farming is a dying breed. It's dying off, especially for people of color. And so I think this is extremely important for our farmers and our senior centers to both link together and for them to gain the education that they need on what it costs to be a farmer, and that it is going to cost a little more, but in the long run, it's benefiting our environment, our community, and our seniors. That's it.
Thank you both. That's a lot of good information there. And finally, evaluation. Christina, how'd you do recruiting people for your evaluation team? I'm not sure who will be speaking.
I'm going to let Bonnie, who represents the Agriculture Network, speak about what we talked about, but I will say that it was myself, Mary, who is part of the UNM support team, and then Bonnie. So really there was only like one person. So I encourage folks, I know today that we had to pick one room to be in, but keep in mind that you can be part of more than one working team. And I encourage more people to join the working team, and I will let Bonnie take over from there.
Yeah, that was definitely the main thing that came up was just for the purposes of equity and inclusion and diversity, and making sure that all of the partners are comfortable with the data management and reporting, all that sort of thing, that we just need some more people in the room. And what we discussed as far as data management was where will it be housed? Possibilities are the NMFMA website, or a partner website. And then just as far as what people's comfort level is with anonymity. And then as far as reporting, UNM will provide the report, but we discussed, does there need to be a beginning paragraph that all the partners agree on, just for the purposes of future reporting? And then should there be a process for reporting as far as transparency when partners are reporting independently in the future? And so that was pretty much the gist of it.
And just for the data storage, it's important to have all the data located in an area that it can be archived for the long term, so all partners can access the raw data and download it for their own analysis and purposes. But you know, a lot of the decisions regarding the data management plan and also just the wider evaluation, you know, we didn't feel comfortable delving into it just because there was not a lot of representation in the room. So we're waiting for that before we move forward with finalizing a lot of the information.
Thank you, Christina and Bonnie. That sounds very reasonable and sounds good. So I think I can, yeah, I mean, I'm going to let Elena wrap it up. There's all kinds of things I could say, but we're getting really close to time. So I'm going to let Elena do a wrap up here. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Denise. And I'm going to pass the buck to Juan, who raised his hand. So, hey, Juan.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of comments regarding what the teams brought up, which I think, first of all, let me just say this. This is the first time we've done this particular activity online. This is normally a process that's done in a room, and it's a lot easier when everybody's in a room and you have this kind of interaction going on. And I'm sure it was very clunky using the electronic version of this process. So thank you for bearing with us in this kind of process. It is clunky, and I agree that we probably would normally spend more time, but it is what it is in terms of our technology and where we're at. Let me just say this, the exercise you went through can actually be applied multiple ways. So right now you are just identifying what we call an asset, devising an asset map. There's additional versions that we will go through in the future. And I just want to bring this up because some people mentioned this. And one of those is issue mapping. It's the same kind of process, except we take an issue. The issue is at the center, and then we build up all of the aspects about that issue, the concerns and the pitfalls and this and that and players, et cetera. So this is a tool that can be used multiple ways to identify actors, assets, issues, et cetera. And so we will be using it or applying it in different ways to ferret out more stuff. This initial map that you made is just that, an initial map, and it will be revisited as time goes on. So I just want to mention that again, especially as we add more members. Once you add more members onto your team, then we will keep revisiting those maps over time. The idea here is we don't want to leave anybody behind. And so there's intentionality built into this mapping process to ensure that that doesn't happen and that we're inclusive. Also, another thing we've talked about is a glossary of terms. Some people were talking about, well, what does Food Hub mean to me? What does Food Hub mean to you, et cetera? And so we do need to come to a kind of a consensual kind of agreement as to what a term means. And so there's going to be a place for that as well, where we develop our own glossary of terms. We're great at using acronyms and this and that to describe things, but sometimes we got to just speak plain English and make sure that what we're trying to communicate to the public at large is understandable and just doesn't mean something to us because we work in that field. So I just wanted to mention those two things, that there's still plenty of room for process in both of those areas to bring us to a common understanding. Elena?
Thanks, Juan. Beautifully done. And yeah, thank you all for taking on the technology today. Again, we regret we're not in person. We know it would have been more dynamic, but we will revisit it. And tomorrow we will do more breakout room session. It won't be on the asset maps, but you will be doing more discussion and dialogue about moving the work forward. So you will have a chance to come back to them. A couple questions that have been raised. How will you access these asset maps if you want to look at them? Again, through your agenda, there's links embedded in the blue text. And so each one of those will link you to the separate Jamboards. You can take a look. So that should be viable for you. If you have an issue with that, let us know. So it's in the agenda. And then wanted to acknowledge that the Zoom recording from yesterday hasn't gone out yet. We will be posting the Zoom recording from today and yesterday this afternoon. So we'll post it via Slack, and I'll shoot out an email as well for those of you that are still getting onto Slack. And then for tomorrow, we just want to give you a little bit of framing. Again, we'll do breakout rooms, and we'll probably we're going to start there. So we're going to start kind of doing breakouts and then come back together to wrap up next steps and discuss how we're moving forward in the next 6 months. So come ready tomorrow to work and be in those smaller rooms from the beginning, more or less. Denise, your hand is raised.
Sorry about that. Yes, my hand is raised because I'm hoping, and I don't know if the other groups we're in the same position, but because tomorrow we're supposed to be building our teams, which was supposed to be based on seeing what the gaps were, based on but we didn't quite finish our map. So, I mean, we're probably done enough to do an analysis of who might be missing, but I think we're going to need to start with who is missing, like doing an analysis of what was there and who was missing so that we can build the team. And that might be true for other groups as well. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Sounds good. We will put our heads together here in this next hour during office hours, backbone team, around that. And so tomorrow we will revisit. And I just want to acknowledge Nina and others that had to leave. Please don't apologize. We're holding you over the 3 o'clock hour. Leave to take care of life. And we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. If you have questions or you want to talk about anything, we will be in the office hours. For today, it's going to require us to close this and then enter another room. So we will see you shortly if you'd like to join us. Thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow.